Hello and welcome to the Bonsai Show. It's starting to get a bit cooler now. The light levels are reducing and of course the leaves on trees are changing and giving us a spectacular display as we get further and further into autumn. And these are just a few of the maples that still have some leaves left. The majority of them have already dropped. And now is a great time for us to look at what is our first feature on this episode, and that is taking hardwood winter cuttings. So if I put these to one side. So what we have here are hardwood winter cuttings taken from trident maple material. The material itself was purchased about 4 years ago and has been grown in the ground to give us this kind of thick material that we can take cuttings from. And we don't like wasting any of this material, but this method will apply to many deciduous trees and shrubs. Trident maples are really easy. Other plants and shrubs like roses just for your garden are another viable option. And there are two ways that we can do them. We obviously do them in pots, but the other method would be to put your shovel, spade in the ground, make a very slim trench, line the bottom with some gravel, and then put the hardwood cuttings in and fold the soil back over. But as we put them into pots, each of these have been taken, the bottom has been cut just below a leaf node. We have applied some rooting hormone powder and then put into a mix of, in this case, compost and perlite. And they'll be left there over winter, and I would expect that by mid-spring we should see roots coming out from the bottom of these pots. So this just goes to show, don't waste any material, use everything you can, and if you can't take the larger hardwood cuttings, which can give us a pretty decent tree in a short space of time, then even the little smaller, thinner bits can go into pots as cuttings ready for next year. So now we're going to go over to another of the interviews from the Bonsai Show Live, and this time it is with Rafael Torres from Spain.
Okay, I'm Rafael Torres. I'm from Spain, Mallorca, and I have my nursery is Bonsai Sense, and I'm doing bonsai for maybe 11 years more or less, and I had my business for 8 years more or less. Yes. I start bonsai because I have a business before, and I have some stress, and I see a small tree and just I fall in love, and I want to buy a tree and learn how to take care about, and this is my first step in bonsai. Yeah. The start is maybe 12 years. It's not so much, but after that I sold my part of my business, my brother, and start more seriously. First like a hobbyist, and after 3.5, 4 years, I was thinking about start the business, and now for a lot of years I'm thinking about bonsai 24 hours, and it's a lot of work, and I'm very happy with the results. I travel a lot, I have good business in my place, and I'm very happy. When I had my other business, I have stressful, and a lot of stressful, and I start doing bonsai, and this helped a lot. It's for that I want more and more and more, and finally I changed my last business. I sell my part and start my own business in bonsai. But it's helped a lot for stressful, for everything, and I think this sounds similar to a lot of people. Yeah? Most important is when you started is focus in the basics about learning. Some people, the first thing they do is focus in the art, in the aesthetic, and doing techniques, but don't understand how run the trees properly, fertilizer, light, everything. You know, I think one of my advice is first of all learn the basics, and after doing this, do the second step.
Well, it was a pleasure to have Rafael Torres at our event in Telford, and it's very good of him to sit down and do an interview. The full version of that interview we'll also upload, and just included the shorter version in this episode. But on to our next point. Once you get wiring out of the way, at this time of year, there isn't really that much else that you can be working on. But one of the things that I would advise is start looking at pot selection, because you have a number of months now until we roll round to repotting season, but finding what you believe or hope is the right pot is actually quite difficult. This is the approach that we generally take. We identify trees that will be up for repot in springtime, mid-spring, and we will then go through the pot selection, and once we've made a decision, we will put that pot underneath the tree that we are looking to repot into it. It takes away the finding out that one or marking them up and trying to deal with it when the time comes. So this will be one of the trees that will get a repot in spring. But if we next move on to looking at angle changing of trees and working on them and being ready for a repot in spring, and we have a tree just over here that we can take a look at. So next on the list is this Sabina juniper, and the point to note really is that we have a wedge placed under the side of this tree, and it could be just a block of wood, it could actually be a house brick, or sometimes for us another pot, and it doesn't mean that we're using that pot to repot this tree into come spring. It just means that we're changing the angle, and by that we are placing the tree at the angle that we will be doing that an eventual repot into. But it means that we get to continue working on the tree in its correct stance. It will also get as much light as it can with the foliage that are directed in that correct manner, and we get to appreciate it and see what will eventually become of the tree in spring. The final point to this one is looking and changing the front of a tree, and we have another tree just here that has recently been worked on. This little yew tree came into the nursery. It has had initial styling really and replacing of the primary branches, not much work beyond that really. But it will go for a new front. When we accept trees into the nursery and work on them, we don't have to stick with a front that's been decided by a previous owner. In this case, the tree is more carved on this as the previous front, and what we've actually undertaken on this is a design where two fronts were chosen as a potential option, and we mark these with two pieces of wire so it guides the eye down and along them. So this is option one. I actually prefer option two, which is round here. So I think come spring we will select a pot for this tree, which we haven't done as yet, and then we'll repot it with this being the new front for this particular piece of material. So now we're off to take a look around another one of our viewers' gardens, this time a nice trip to Merseyside.
I'll give you a little scan just to start with. Let's walk across to Sabina juniper that I bought just after Christmas. It's had its first styling. Have a quick look round. Here we have a crab apple. A little tiny, here we have just a little tiny maple. This is a European larch. When I bought it, it had 5 trunks and it was all very upright. As you see, this branch has been hollowed out and bent down with a little Japanese quince that comes out in white flower. There was 2 of them, but I'm afraid one died. Scots pine. A Portuguese oak. Nice little tree that is. Another Scots pine that I dewired a couple of weeks ago. It's flushing out nicely. It's probably 3 times the amount of foliage on it as it had 2 years ago. A hawthorn which I picked up earlier this year from Crawley. Not keen on the pot, but that'll get changed. Another Toigawa juniper. Big Scots pine at the back. We have a olive here, which I actually air laid this olive off a big olive. Beech tree, thick old stump on this, you can see it. Hornbeam there, European. A couple of branches over the back that seem for some reason to have died, I think. Hopefully that's the only bit of it that'll die. A yew, another yew. A big old field maple with a lot of dead wood to it.
Well, it was a fantastic look around that garden, and some of the trees in that garden actually featured in the event at Telford. So for 2024 we'll certainly be looking to prize a few more of those trees out of the garden and into public display. Before we leave this episode, another timely piece, and that is as October and November roll round, we start to get into storm season and high winds, certainly. Here at the nursery we suffer particularly badly with winds that blow across the site, and in actual fact it's blowing up a little bit now. So for us, the answer for any trees such as this one, which have a tendency to blow over, we strap them to the bench, and in this case I'm using black twine. And what we need to do is put a couple of layers around the tree, once I can get enough. In that manner, and get it tight enough. When we tie it off, nice and tight. One of those moments where, there we go. That tree will now be more secure from blowing over. And that's it for this episode. We hope you found the information useful. And if you would like to submit one of your gardens for our viewer section, then the email address is down below in the comments, and we would love to receive your submissions.